Roxo Media House. From the Flying T Studio at Roxo Media House, this is a special edition of Frogs Today, the Conference Shuffle, with TCU head basketball coach Jamie Dixon, former TCU athletic director Eric Hyman, our headliner, CBS Sports national college football writer Dennis Dodd, and our FrogsToday.com experts David Beaudin, Melissa Triebwasser, and Jeff Wilson. Here's your host, the voice of the Frogs, Brian Estridge.
Welcome into a special edition of Frogs Today. I'm Brian Estridge, and with all the talk that's going on as far as conference realignment and reconstruction is concerned, with the news last week that UCLA and USC are headed off to the Big Ten, we thought we would focus this week primarily on conference expansion and what that means for the Big 12, and more specifically, what it means for TCU. Now, FrogsToday.com is your one-stop website for all the latest up-to-the-second information. Jeff and Melissa and David and Jamie are on there every day with the latest rumors, the latest information that you need to know. We thought today we would take a look at, okay, here's what we know so far. Here's what could happen as far as TCU's future is concerned. With that, I want to bring in David Beaudin, our recruiting analyst. David, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you, brother.
Because let's face it, this all revolves around money, and recruiting is money. And we know that is important. When the Big 12 added Houston, added Central Florida, that helped in recruiting, fertile recruiting grounds, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. I think for those programs, though, there's a bigger impact because you're going from a group of five to Power Five. If you look at UCF, for instance, this year, they had the number one recruiting class in their current conference, the AAC, and just had a huge boost, tremendous boost in recruiting. I think it's a little bit different when you're in current Power Five and sitting in obviously a recruiting fertile ground here in DFW.
Or if you're USC and UCLA, fertile recruiting ground, the Big Ten wants you, right, because they want to be able to recruit into California, I'm assuming.
Sure, yeah, of course. And, obviously the media market plays into that, and it goes back to your bottom line in terms of money.
It is all about money. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm pretty talented this way. I want you to know. All right, so this is a map of the United States. What do you think?
I'll buy it.
Am I doing okay so far?
Sure.
There's the United States. Not bad, huh? All right, so what we know right now is this is kind of Big 12 country, okay? Obviously, you got Cincinnati, you got West Virginia, you got UCF that are coming into the league. All right, those are not perfect, I know, but West Virginia is a little bit more over here. But and then we got what is consistently been Pac-12 country right through here. Okay, this is all Pac-12. All right, the Big Ten has been in this part of the. Now what they've done is they've picked up these teams over here, a couple over here. The obvious answer for most folks is that the Big 12 would go right here, right? You would pick up the two Arizona teams, Colorado and BYU. What does that do for recruiting?
Yeah, again, I'd like to sit here and tell you that it's a big deal for TCU, but really, I mean, when you see successful teams, you look at what Tom Herman did down in Houston when he fenced off an area. He really got that back when Miami got it going. Back in the day, they just fenced off and said, okay, we're going to get every recruit, within a 20-mile radius. You can do that here at TCU. I think from a media market standpoint, you add some stuff in the Phoenix, even a lesser degree, the Tucson market in Arizona. I think that's a good one. Utah, while they, if you're looking at football specific, play a great brand of football,
Right.
the media market's not there.
Salt Lake's
right?
not big.
That's right. And so from a recruiting
Denver and
standpoint,
Colorado.
sure.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Right. And from a recruiting standpoint, though, it doesn't do as much for
Nothing.
you. Right. Exactly. So I think for these guys, they've really got to focus on being here. Big Ten, they've done their recruiting. Really done. New Jersey is big. Obviously, when you look at the Northeast part, but otherwise, your recruiting grounds are South Florida, Central to South Florida,
Right.
Houston, DFW, and then of course Southern California.
Which is why they add USC and UCLA. The reason I bring this up is if you're the Big 12 and you're looking for expansion, okay, these are your four obvious. That puts you at 16. We're going to talk about this throughout the show. Why stop at 16? If the SEC is going to go to 20, and if the Big 10 you think is going to go to 20, why not add four more? Right. Tell me where the best four are then at that point. I mean, are you talking picking four out of the six Big 12 that are Pac-12 that are left? Do you say, hey, I'm going to go get Boise State? Where is it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think obviously this is where it's headed. It's headed to the Super Conference with 20 or so apiece from the SEC and the Big Ten, right? That's where all the talk is. I think what it does for the Big 12 is puts them in a position of greater strength, honestly. Where it was trending after the Oklahoma-Texas news, jetting off to the SEC, I think now the trajectory is heading up, right? Because now you can position yourself as really the third conference in this whole deal. Now, I think what people are leaving out is the Pac-12. Everyone's jockeying for position. Everyone just kind of assumes the Pac-12 is going to dissolve. They're fighting for some teams themselves. So where they come from, I don't know, but I think you're right in terms of getting to the 20, just so you can align yourself with the big dogs and all this.
The other rumors that are out there is if the Big Ten decides they want to go and get North Carolina, which has always kind of been on their radar. If they get North Carolina, does that create some sort of implosion in the ACC? Do Florida State and Clemson decide they're going to go to the SEC? At that point, what does the SEC have left? Does that free you up to go snag somebody to partner with Cincinnati and West Virginia and maybe even Central Florida? I mean, so there are a lot of options out there if you're the Big 12. That's why I think you got to be careful in saying, okay, we're just going to take 6 teams out of the Pac-12 or 8 teams out of the Pac-12.
I agree, and I think at the same time you need to make sure that you're guarding and protecting your own, right?
Yeah.
Because these other conferences, obviously, they're looking to poach teams as well. So you've got to play offense and defense in this whole thing, and make sure that you're not just looking at teams you're going to add, that you're making sure that you keep the ones that you do have covered.
All right, let's talk about the Big 12 real quick then. If we talk about the most marketable program in the Big 12 that another conference could poach from, TCU's got to be at the top of that list, doesn't it?
There's no question.
Because of the recruiting area.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this before, but the number one recruiting market in metro area is DFW in the country. All these experts will talk about Southern California and Southern Florida and Houston, but the year in and year out, the most Division I kids come out of any metro area is DFW. So there's no reason why TCU can't be sort of that benchmark and that team that everybody's looking at.
After TCU, of the current Big 12 members, who's the most marketable?
Well, I think from a recruiting standpoint, Houston, right?
Okay.
But they don't have obviously in football they don't have the blue blood.
The Power 5 history.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. But from a strictly recruiting, program, absolutely Houston, and then I would say Central Florida now as well, because they can pull kids from South Georgia. And obviously Miami-Dade County down in South Florida, which is just loaded with talent.
Really hard for you to do, but I'm going to have you take your coaching headsets off for a second.
Right.
If I'm another league and I'm looking at the Big 12, TCU obviously would be at the top of my list, but the other team I would have to consider, and this is not football driven, would have to be Kansas.
Right.
Doesn't it? I mean,
sure. Yeah.
AAU school, great basketball tradition.
Absolutely. And the word out of Kansas that I've gotten anyways, they feel like they're in the best position they've been in a long time, right? Where they're actually now can be sort of the bell of the ball,
right? Where
in the past, everyone was kind of looking at them as an afterthought. So I think you're exactly right with Kansas.
Yeah. Leave out anything? Did we leave out anything?
I think we got it all figured out.
Well, you got the Mountain West with Boise and Colorado State potentially out there as players in this. The Mountain West, to me, I think needs to be aggressive and go after Washington State and Oregon State and those types. The two Dakotas are interesting to me. You know, I mean,
Right.
those are programs that are on the rise that somebody could really get. The Mountain West has got to be talking to them. You'd assume.
There's no question, right? Just
Yeah.
being such a power at the FCS level
Yeah.
for so long that I think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, David. Thanks for coming
Thank you,
by.
Brian.
As you can see, a lot of questions, not a lot of answers. We're going to try to get those answered for you throughout these next few minutes here on Frogs Today. More to come after this timeout.
FrogsToday.com is the ultimate TCU sports fan community. Members enjoy exclusive content from inside the locker room, feature presentations, access to athletes, coaches, and alumni that are making headlines, and a live show featuring Brian Estridge. Join us and an interactive sports community full of Horned Frog fans now at FrogsToday.com. Frogs Today is a Roxo Media House production.
Frogs Today continues right now, and obviously it's a big week as far as conference realignment is concerned. Let's start the discussion here early on with a couple of, self-titled experts, if you would. Melissa Triebwasser is joining us right now via Zoom. Good to see you, Melissa. How are you?
Doing well. Good to be here. Thanks, Brian.
And, of course, we have the man with the plan, as he likes to refer to himself, Jeff Wilson. Let's find out what his plan is as far as reconstruction is concerned now, the Big 12. That's essentially what it is. All right, let's start with where we are right now.
Okay.
All right, Jeff, let's start with you. You have seen USC and you've seen UCLA depart for the Big Ten.
Yes.
Are we done?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I don't think it's even close. I think there's a report, I think, out of Salt Lake City Monday. 4 schools are going to meet with the Big 12, Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, who are kind of now leftovers in the Pac-10. I mean, everybody is if USC and UCLA are gone. And then also a report that Oregon and Washington want to meet with the Big Ten. So, there's definite movement, and you just got to figure out what's best. I mean, it looks like everybody's going to these super conferences, and you got to get what's best. What's going to get you on TV, what's going to get you the best TV package, what's best for recruiting, things like that. And it looks like the Pac-10 is going to be history, and unless the remaining schools in the Mountain West or something come together. But no, I think this is a pretty cataclysmic change, bigger really than Oklahoma and Texas leaving for the SEC. It looks like potentially just leveling one conference that has rich tradition and all kinds of sports.
All right, let's see if there's a different perspective on the West Coast. Melissa, you're joining us from Pac-12 country right now. Do you get that sense that the Pac-12 feels like they're about to implode?
I talked to a source inside the Pac-12 as well, connected to a prominent athletic department there, that said the death knell could come as early as this week for that conference as a whole. Everybody's kind of waiting on Notre Dame. They're going to be the straw that breaks or makes the camel's back here. There was another report that came out over the weekend that the Big Ten has targeted Notre Dame, Stanford, Oregon, and UNC, which seems a bit of an outlier, as their next expansion targets. But everybody's waiting to see what the Irish do. The Irish they've always had a unique bargaining position, going back to the 90s with their deal with NBC. And so but they've never had this kind of power as they do right now. So they can pretty much ask for the moon, and the Big Ten is going to give it to them. And when that happens, which I do believe it will, then the ACC gets in the same boat that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are in now. So I do think we're moving towards a super conference era, but it's going to be the SEC, the Big Ten, and everybody else scrambling to make something relevant out of what's left of their conference programs.
It's kind of ironic. The Big 12 makes an announcement last week that Brett Yormark is going to be the new commissioner. This happens. This is obviously on his watch, but Bob Bowlesby will play a big role in this too, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you've got somebody coming in that has never really been involved in college athletics in this way. Personally, I think Yormark this is a nice break for the Big 12, that they get somebody who's so connected in the entertainment side of things, because that's really what college football is moving towards. I mean, we're seeing rumors of $100 billion TV deal coming for the Big Ten down the pipeline per school. So to have somebody who understands the business, I think, is almost more important than understanding college athletics itself right now. But you're still going to need Bowlesby to kind of help Yormark get up to speed. This man's supposed to start on August 1st, and by then the entire landscape of college athletics could have completely and totally changed. So I think having Bowlesby tied in, somebody who kept the Big 12 together a year ago, especially if we're negotiating to see Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado come in. It's really important to keep him on board, keep him around, and help Yarmark have the best chance for success once he starts on August 1st.
all of a sudden when it felt like the Big 12 was a league that was on the outside looking in, now it looks like it's got a chance to be the third best league going.
It does.
I mean, that's a bit of a surprise, is it not?
It is. I mean, I still wonder if there's who's your anchor team.
Yeah.
You know, that's you have the show ponies, I guess, in Texas and Oklahoma,
Right.
the traditional programs, the powers. Who's going to take their spot? But if you can add teams that are good, like if you add Arizona and Arizona State, how good of a baseball conference is the Big 12 going to be?
And Utah not bad at baseball.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And you're adding Houston and Cincinnati already. It's going to up what is already a great basketball conference.
Yep.
So if you're looking for a football anchor, that's kind of the key. And there's opportunities here. And you know the DFW market. Everybody wants the DFW market. So that's TCU's biggest feather in their cap, if you will, right now, at least in terms of positioning themselves. And who knows? What if TCU decides this isn't best for them? I mean, is that a possibility?
Well, that was my next question. It's two related. Melissa, why can't TCU be that bell cow for this new league? Why can't they be, because of the market, why can't they be the decision maker in here?
I mean, you would think this is a prime opportunity for Jeremiah Donati and the brass at TCU to step up and lead the charge and be the decision makers and decide that they want to be the anchor school. When you look around, I think Jeff's absolutely right. There is not that blue blood program remaining in the Big 12. And at this point, the only Pac-12 program that can kind of state that is probably Oregon. Washington obviously has a deep history of success, but really TCU and Washington have been on similar footing here for the last, better part of the decade. And so if I'm TCU, I'm absolutely taking ownership of the DFW market, of the future of the conference as a program that has had success at almost the highest level in college football and deciding that we want to be the ones leading the charge going forward. But you're right. When you look across the landscape of what's going to be left, there's not going to be that marquee blue blood program. And with streaming, it's going to be interesting to see what does a market look like going forward? How important is a specific geographic region to an ESPN or an Apple TV or a Fox or whoever ends up taking over the next step versus how much does the name brand matter? Because they're obviously not worried about regional rivalries in this new round of realignment. I don't think USC at Maryland's going to be a big draw going forward, but at the same token, those names do carry weight. And so I think it is a prime opportunity for TCU to have success, whether that's a part of what the next iteration of a super conference is, or whether that's determining, hey, we're going to be the best program in the FBS, which might be a step up from the FCS, but still that same kind of look, and actually have an opportunity to compete for playoff spots. I mean, 2014 wasn't that long ago. I mean, we know it's been the outside looking in. So why not take ownership of this next iteration and be the best team around?
Yeah, these super conferences obviously going to go to East-West divisions, AFL versus NFL, whatever you want to call it, AFC versus NFC. All right, let me ask you this real quick, though, as we wrap this up, Jeff. Do you stop at adding those four? I mean, it feels to me like these super conferences, we've always heard that North Carolina's been on the Big Ten's radar, that they've always wanted North Carolina for some reason. Why would you stop at 17 or 18? Why wouldn't that magic number be 20? And if that's the case, Big 12 adding those four out of Pac-12, where do they pick the other two from?
At that point, are you getting the best? I mean, you're
but everybody else,
watered
but
down.
If everyone else is at 20,
yeah, okay, then go Boise State. Do you want Boise State?
Or do you add Washington State and Oregon State?
Yeah.
What happens to Cal? I mean, does Cal go to the Big Ten automatically? That's, there's still some decisions to be made.
There are. I mean, I have a bias for San Diego. I don't understand why San Diego State.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a more attractive.
You and
team.
Melissa both.
Yeah, there's something about it. But
she'll take you to a great fish taco place.
I heard.
Awesome, yeah, it's awesome. Melissa, thank you for joining us here on the West Coast. Thank you for the insight from the Pac-12. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again, so be ready. Anything you hear from your sources out there, please alert us. And obviously, you can find it first on frogstoday.com. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right, Jeff Wilson, let's keep monitoring it and see what happens.
Yeah.
We're not done.
No, not at all.
It's going to be going on for a while. All right. That'll do it for this edition of the Experts Roundtable. We've got a lot more still to do here on Frogs Today, including a visit with the head basketball coach, Jamie Dixon. We'll get his perspective on it when we continue after this timeout.
Crooks, criminals, killers. These stories of crime and punishment in the 21st century Western society, as told through the lens of retired Fort Worth Vice Cop Jake White and investigative journalist John Henry.
Catch a new episode every Saturday anywhere you get your podcasts or at signal51chronicles.com. Signal 51 Chronicles is a Roxo Media House production. FrogsToday.com is the ultimate TCU sports fan community. Members enjoy exclusive content from inside the locker room, feature presentations, access to athletes, coaches, and alumni that are making headlines, and a live show featuring Brian Estridge. Join us and an interactive sports community full of Horned Frog fans now at FrogsToday.com. Frogs Today is a Roxo Media House production.
Frogs Today rolls on right now with our headliner, Jamie Dixon, the head men's basketball coach at TCU, joining us from Pac-12 Company via the via the Zoom right now. Coach, let's dive right into all that's how does conference expansion and realignment, how does it affect a program? You're trying to build a program year in and year out. Does it affect it at all?
Well, I'm sure tomorrow I'll be out recruiting, and that's all we'll be talking about, all the different coaches. And yeah, it does. I mean, there's some impact on it. I think now with basketball, a lot of spring recruiting is almost as important, probably more important as we know to transfers. But it's certainly a topic of conversation. I've been talking with guys this weekend, and then we're going to see them out on the road tomorrow. So it affects who conferences, but there's been so much change over the years. Teams have been in so many different conferences. TCU is a great example. My career is a great example. So I don't know. I think we just come to live with it, expect it. And, I talk about, I started out in the big West, they changing teams, Big Sky, the WAC, when they went to 16, everybody thought that was the craziest thing ever. I was at Hawaii at the time. Yep. Big Sky, ACC, Big Ace, everywhere there's been realignment. So, it took 6 years in the did I lose you there?
Nope, I got you still.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're still sounding good. The interesting thing is you've been on the ground floor too. I mean, you think about it, when TCU was trying to make its move to the Big East, you were in that league at the time, and you could kind of anticipate what was coming at that point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think obviously a lot of people know the story. It's just the goal of going into the Big East was to get to the Big 12 eventually. It just happened a lot quicker than we would have thought, but that we thought was the best step. And, it's just timing is everything. TCU was coming off a great football year, and it was the right time. Big East needed football schools, and the record was a factor. And then my boss, the chancellor, was the head of the expansion committee. So timing was good at Pitt. And then it was the right time, right thing at the right time. And you see schools doing that right now. They're kind of seizing the opportunity, seizing the time, and everybody can go, why are you doing this? Well, I think they're fearful of what could happen. And I think that was why you got to question it, but you also got to look at, the decision chancellor made and the administration made back in the day to go to the Big East, and then the Big 12 was very, very smart, intuitive, and looking towards the future. And that's what these schools are doing too, because they're looking for what's going to be down the road when you talk about USC, UCLA, and then obviously Texas and Oklahoma.
As much focus as there is on the Pac-12 and the potential dismantling of it, and really the focus on the Big Ten and the SEC, could it be that the Big 12 is in a position of power when it comes to being that third league now?
That's what I think. I mean, I think we've really been the third league, and obviously football is more the factor in this, as we've seen. And basketball surely has pulled its weight in the Big 12, but it's certainly I think we're in a great spot. I mean, I think we're Big 12, and I would anticipate we're the conference that picks up teams and adds teams and adds value. based on where we're at and what our league has done in both football and basketball. And we know that football drives the bus, but we also know the fact basketball is a factor. And it'll become more of a factor if the NCAA tournament becomes like college football is, as far as how the payments go out. The basketball money is just split among 1,000 schools and the NCAA offices, and so that's really the difference in it, because the value is there. It's just redistributed differently.
A couple of questions for you. If they named you commissioner today, would you the most likely scenario that we're hearing are the two Arizona schools, potentially Colorado and Utah? That puts you at 16 teams in the Big 12. Why wouldn't you just go to 20 with every indication that the Big 10 and the SEC have their sights on that number?
Yeah, because if there's going to be quality candidates available, I guess would be the question. But as we've talked about, you and I mean, the four seem obvious. We seem to be the more stable conference. The other six, I guess, that are left in the Pac-12, the distance, which isn't a factor anymore, as we know, it's almost a benefit. I mean, you want time zones, you want different locations, you want different cities, but I got to think. I don't know if the Big Ten would be done with the two in the Northwest. So. We'll see. A lot of speculation, but I do believe that the Big 12 is because of what we've done on the field and the court is put ourselves in a position where we're I guess the ones that are hunting rather than being the huntees.
Yeah, but let me ask you this: you talk time zones too. You got Central Florida and you got West Virginia on the East Coast, Cincinnati as well. Do you need more over there? I mean, could it be an expansion of 4 from the Pac-12 and then try to see if there's not another East Coast team or two to add balance to the league?
Well, I think there's a value and balance of the time zones, and I think that's something that we found that wasn't as important back in the day, but now seems to be a driving force. I just don't know who you get. I mean, obviously, I think once you go to the ACC, I don't know any movement, and the Big East schools or I guess the the AAC schools. I just don't know who else would be a candidate. You just don't want to. You got to get the right candidates. I think. The great thing about our expansion, some may say now, in the other 4 schools that we added, the Houston, Cincinnati, BYU, and Central Florida was, well, why did we do that now? And some would say, look back, but we had to gain stability, and if we hadn't, that would have, I think, put us in a tougher situation. So I think we're in a good spot now, how things have played out. But again, no one has gotten this thing right. I talk about it. I mean, it's just like no one has predicted, and they may say that they have, but I surely haven't seen it in print or on a show where they've predicted what's exactly going to happen on this thing as we play it out. I think that the one thing that was telling was that the 4 schools that we brought in, there was pretty much a consensus. Those were the 4 schools, and that's unique. But that's a good sign that we at least got 4 that were very the most powerful, available, and that fit us the best.
Final thought: you're in Pac-12 country, out recruiting, as we mentioned. You grew up out there. It's hard to imagine we're talking about the potential end of that league, isn't it? I mean, which was even I grew up on the East Coast. That was still a prestigious league, the Rose Bowl, USC and UCLA. I mean, it's hard to believe that league could be no longer.
No, it truly is, and I've seen it. I mean, with Pitt and moving from a completely different league. I mean, sometimes there's realignment, and you're in the same. Similar schools, similar region. With Pitt, we went to the ACC, and I just found it, especially in football, we found was just, I mean, even though you may be playing a little better football team, it didn't work. It didn't feel the NC State game, the Wake Forest, they didn't in football now. They'd rather have played a Syracuse or a Connecticut, I guess you could say.
West Virginia.
West Virginia for that one, but there was just a little bit of, a Temple. I mean, just teams that maybe not great, but still.
Coach, I think we lost you there, but I get the gist of what you're saying, that there is a fit that teams have to look for, and I get that. I totally get that is very important.
Yeah, no, it's the Pac-12. Like you said, I think people are in shock. But LA's become such a pro sports area that they're battling they've got other battles.
Oh, I know. Jamie Dixon, thank you very much for carving out some time for us. Good luck on the recruiting trail, all right?
Yeah, thank you.
There he goes, Jamie Dixon, the head men's basketball coach here at TCU. A lot more still to come. Frogs Today continues in a moment.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com.
FrogsToday.com is the ultimate TCU sports fan community. Members enjoy exclusive content from inside the locker room, feature presentations, access to athletes, coaches, and alumni that are making headlines, and a live show featuring Brian Estridge. Join us and an interactive sports community full of Horned Frog fans now at FrogsToday.com. Frogs Today is a Roxo Media House production.
Welcome back into Frogs Today. Our headliner today is Dennis Dodd, the national football writer for CBS Sports. You can find him at cbssportshq.com. Dennis, thanks for the time today. This is a crazy time, obviously, in college athletics. You're on top of it. Give us the latest as far as we can tell. I mean, are we on the cusp of some major shake again here in the college football world?
Remains to be seen. Outside the Pac-12 and Big 12, you've got Notre Dame that may have to make a decision sooner than later. There's all kinds of upheaval in the ACC where they're seeing themselves fall behind the Big 10 and SEC because they're locked into a deal that's frankly going to be below market all the way to 2036. So there's almost like 3 or 4 different stories that are sort of related, but not related, but could be related if certain things happen.
And it's interesting, the twists and turns. You'll see a headline that says the Big 12 may suck up the Pac-12. Then you'll see another headline that says the Pac-12 may suck up the Big 12. I mean, which way, if those two get together, who ends up winning?
Or a third option, because the Pac-12 is has gone out the market now with ESPN and Fox. They try to make a go of it with 10. There's really financially no one has leverage. I guess if you had to pick one, it would be the Big 12 over the Pac-12 because they have a conference and they're ready to go forward with those 12. A decision has to be made, if they want to get more from the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is wounded. We know that because of the loss of USC or UCLA. But I'm told in any configuration, the money difference between those two leagues is really negligible. So it's less of a money play and more about fortification and positioning yourself for whatever the challenge looks like at the top. I mean, I think the more brands you hold in your conference, the less that the SEC and Big 10 can stage their own credible playoff, which they're pretty darn close to now.
If the Pac-12 were to expand, the easy way would be to go get San Diego State and Boise State. Is that more likely, or if the Pac-12 says we got to go get 2 more, do they try to raid the Big 12?
Well, the first play is obviously the Big 12. And, that has happened. Big 12 teams, maybe not this time, but last year about this time when there was upheaval within the league with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, there were several teams calling the West Coast. In fact, I talked to George Kliavkoff a couple of weeks ago, the Pac-12 commissioner, and he said to this day, he gets calls every 10 to 14 days from schools wanting to join the Pac-12. He didn't say which. And again, this is before, I'm sure he even had knowledge of USC and UCLA leaving. But the first play right now would be to the Big 12. There's better brands. A fallback, and it is a fallback, would be to go get, San Diego State, Boise State, UNLV, something like that.
When you look at the Big Ten, obviously Notre Dame is top of mind to them. After Notre Dame's decision, what's next? Is it Oregon and Washington? Is it North Carolina on the East Coast, or do we know?
If Notre Dame stands pat and remains an independent, then I think things stay pretty static. I don't know if the Big Ten does anything else. I know that in that scenario, Oregon and Washington just don't bring value to the Big Ten. They're not worth 80 to 100 million per year, which is what they'd have to get to join that league. And that's why I think you're seeing so much. I was confused. If the Big 12 is going to go to the Pac-12, why don't they just go get the two biggest brands? But I think geography has something to do with it. And I think also as close as you can get, I think geography has a lot to do with it. When one of the most powerful people in sports on earth, Phil Knight is working the phones, trying to find a home for Oregon, it's serious out there. And I can't completely explain why they can't find a home, but it won't be in the Big Ten, at least in this configuration. So, with what you're talking about, again, I think there's a lot of nervousness in the ACC. Some of those schools are trying to find a way out, and by way out, I mean, the grant of rights, which is pretty solid. It goes till 2036. It's going to be hard to get out of, but that's not to say you can't get out of it. As we learned with anything in realignment, that with a powerful enough lawyer and enough money, you can get out of any of these.
Dennis, one final thought on this. Let's go back to the Southeast then. Clemson, Florida State, Miami, any potential for SEC movement?
I think they'd want to go. Again, it's a situation where how do you get out of that grant of rights?
Right.
I know, lawyers are feverishly studying that document to find out, if they can, and there will be more nervousness in the system if Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten. Short of that, then those three powers, are talking about playing probably, till 2036 with below market money. And the number that's been thrown out to me is $50 million below what the SEC and Big Ten would make. Think about that when it comes to hiring coaches, or competing to hire coaches, staff, assistants, debt service, facilities, recruiting, everything. I mean, when I talk about the ACC, I'm talking about everybody else being second class in that scenario.
All right, Dennis. We look forward to the Big 12 Media Days next week. Looking forward to seeing you at AT&T Stadium in Arlington. We get to meet Commissioner Yormark, who's got a little bit on his plate right now. The tag team duo of he and Commissioner Bowles, we get to work on it. We'll find out what happens in the coming days. Dennis, thanks for taking time for us today.
All right, Dennis. Thank you.
Yes, that's Dennis Dodd, the national football writer, of course, for CBS Sports. You can find him at cbssports.hq for all the latest. All right, more to come on Frogs Today. Eric Hyman, the former athletic director at TCU. He's worked his way through many a conference change. He will join us next as we continue with Frogs Today after this time.
What do you call a Fort Worth-centric podcast featuring guests of international, national, and local fame? Fortitude FW. Why catch the latest episode? Because every guest has a story to tell. Join hosts J.W. Wilson and Britton Payne every Friday for the latest stories from noted Fort Worthians in business, sports, lifestyle, entertainment, law enforcement, politics, and, well, you get the idea. Fortitude FW, where the stories never die. Listen anywhere you get your podcasts or at fortitudefw.com. Fortitude FW is a Roxo Media House production.
The Flying T Club provides the everyday TCU fan and alum the ability to specifically support TCU student-athletes. Flying T Club offers 3 levels of memberships. The Flying T Club is a nonprofit organization supporting the brand development of TCU student-athletes through a series of unique event-based networking opportunities, which are exclusive to our members. These events provide a great social engagement tool for our members and student-athletes alike. Follow them on Instagram at Flying T Club or online at flyingtclub.com.
Frogs Today continues now as we welcome in Eric Hyman, former athletic director here at TCU. Been around the block, folks. You think about it. We thought we would get your perspective, kind of wrap things up, to put a bow on this conversation we've had on conference realignment and reconfiguration, because you've lived it. And I think you can give us a perspective, Eric, on really what's happening behind the scenes that we as lay people don't know is going on. What all is going on right now?
Well, I think one of the issues that's going on, and it's the big driver of what's taking place in conference. It was when I was at TCU. There's an expression, follow the money, and there's a financial pie that every conference has. And what you want to be able to do, if you're going to add schools, you've got to increase that financial pie so everybody gets the same slice. The challenge today is, and ESPN knows exactly what every school brings to the table as far as people watching them, the eyes. Mm-hmm. And so that's the challenge that's going to be faced. Is the financial pie going to stay the same, or is it going to shrink, or is it going to be enhanced? Then obviously you see what's taken place with UCLA and Southern Cal and Texas and Oklahoma. They've enhanced the financial pie for the Big Ten and for the SEC. Now, you don't know what's going to happen, what's in the marketplace, but TV already knows what they're going to bring and what they're going to deal with.
Is it all about money, though? Is that, I know that's the number one consideration, but is it really all about money?
It's all about money.
Yeah.
And money drives. And ESPN is sort of the silent partner.
Right.
But they're behind the scenes.
Yeah. The puppet master.
Oh, exactly. That's what's taking place. And ESPN is right in the thick of things, but they don't want to have their name tied into specifically into conference, into the different conference changes. And so that's where it is. That's the reality of it. I mean, you talk about, the rivalries. Well, it's about, but the rivalries are dissipating.
Right.
I mean, and then you look at the travel. And the academic, for, let's say, the women's tennis team from UCLA wants to play Rutgers. Think about all the academic time and think about the cost. Now, they're going to be able to support the cost-wise because the financial pie is going to be enhanced dramatically for the Big Ten. So those kind of things that you look at.
Those are things that I had on my list too, that no matter they don't come into consideration anymore.
Well,
right?
I think maybe there's going to be a different model that's going to impact. I can't see UCLA and Southern Cal having to travel to the extent that they're
An East-West division.
An East-West. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see eventually what happened is that you have maybe like the AFC, the American Football, and then you have the NFL,
right,
and then they have two different divisions, and then you come for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, then it ends up coming that. If you think about these power leagues and whether or not the Big Ten or the SEC are making this grab to get to 20 or whatever that number is, in your mind, is there room for a TCU? Is there a room for the Big 12 and Pac-12 in that model somehow?
Well, it's interesting. When Chris Delconte was here, he asked me to help him as far as making sure that TCU was well positioned for the future. So I talked to Greg Sankey, and Greg Sankey said, "You got to win, baby.
Yeah,
you got to win, but you also got to continue to improve in your facilities and all those other things that go along with winning. You've got to show progress in that respect. So the bottom line is you got to win." And TCU is going to be limited by the amount of eyes they bring to the TV set. But there for a while we were the darlings of the country,
right?
And so that's where TCU has to be.
Yeah. What do you think of the potential of the Big 12 going to snag a couple of teams out of the Pac-12? I mean, are we seeing the end of days for the Pac-12 potentially?
Could be in reverse too.
Yeah.
I mean, you just don't know. You don't know. I'm not privy to what's going on behind closed doors.
Right.
So yes, I think that's a possibility. I think right now it's just a work in progress.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ancillary things that are taking place as far as conference affiliation. So what one day may be real important, the next day may not be so important. It depends on the variables. It depends on the facts that people are dealing with. But like I said, TCU's got to win.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. And you hate to be that blunt about it, but
Right.
that's what they've got to be able to do.
You think about your history here at TCU when we were in the 16-team WAC to the 8-team WAC to you're able to land Conference USA. I remember that we found that out at a golf tournament. We were at Mira Vista, right?
And
we learned.
And to me, and then we went to Mountain West.
Yes.
While I was here, so we went 4 conferences.
Right.
So I'm an expert on
Yeah,
this thing.
right.
But I'll never forget it, Brian. I broached the subject with that golf at that golf outing, that TCU Golf Frog Club golf outing,
Yeah.
and it went over like it was dead.
Yeah.
There was no understanding of the marketplace.
Right.
And I walked out, and I almost cried. I walked out of there because it was a lot of hard work to get us into Conference USA. We would never be where we are today without going into Conference USA. And because you look back then, it was Cincinnati and Louisville,
Sure.
it was Marquette, it was DePaul, East Carolina Army.
Yeah.
There was some great programs in
Yeah.
there. Back then, I don't know that we felt that way. But through that, we got, because of Conference USA, and I walked out, people didn't understand.
Right.
They really didn't understand how significant that move was for TCU.
And the good news was at that point, though, somebody wanted you. And then the Mountain West wanted you. And then the Big 12 wanted
Exactly.
you. Yeah,
Exactly. And why? Why do they want us?
Yeah.
Because we put a good product on the field of competition. And, let's face it, the other sports, basketball and baseball, are real important. But the engine that drives the train is football.
Sure.
And when I was at South Carolina, 71% of our budget was generated by football.
Right.
About 18% was men's basketball. And then you had other issues or other different factors that brought in money.
And then you transition Texas A&M into the SEC out of the Big 12. I mean, those maneuvers right there. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that, as we talked about. A lot of behind-the-scenes work.
Oh, no
that
question.
Folks don't have any idea.
Oh, well, the ADs talked about, when I was in the SEC, the ADs talked about Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And I really felt, I had an awareness and understanding of A&M where nobody else did. None of the other ADs did.
Yeah.
And I said, you just don't understand how significant Texas A&M is. And I wasn't that familiar with Missouri, but I was with Texas A&M because I had a sister and a son-in-law go to school there.
Yeah.
And so you look at and I said to people, if we don't bring A&M in, you ought to play a game with Texas A&M. And because Kyle Field there's no other place like Kyle Field.
Right, there is no question about that. I guess what we can say here in this special that we put together here on conference restructuring is none of us know the answers yet.
Exactly.
It'll happen. But I am going to follow what you told me, and that is follow the money.
Follow the money. That's the name. That's college football.
It is that.
That's college athletics.
Today for sure. Eric, thanks for coming by.
Great to see you, Brian. As
Let's
always.
come back and visit talk about some great memories over the years.
Oh, we've had some great ones.
Yeah,
we really do. No question.
Eric Hyman joining us, former athletic director here at TCU. That'll do it for this edition of Frogs Today, our special edition here on Conference Realignment and Reconstruction. We'll continue to track it throughout the days. The latest at frogstoday.com for that. And, of course, next week we're at Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday and Thursday. You better believe this will be topic number one. We'll have it covered for you. Thanks for joining us this week on Frogs Today. Until next week, live from AT&T Stadium we come over in Arlington. We'll see you then.
Are you supposed to be here? Try pulling it harder.
Let me in.
Harder. Give me 1 second. Brian.
Can you let me in?
What's the door code?
5. Did that work? No? Try 21.
Come on.
Brian. Someone's here to see you.
Frogs Today is brought to you by the Flying Tea Club, supporting TCU student athletes, and by Richard's Rainwater. Say hello to the water of tomorrow. Frogs Today is a production of Roxo Media House. Roxo Media House.